Shirey, a little late episode 4, but episode 4 of the Breakdowns and Breakaways podcast. We normally schedule Wednesdays for the recording, but one of us had to go to a Pirates game and take pictures, so sorry.
No, don't apologize. If anybody has not seen your baseball photos that you took, they need to. They are phenomenal, and you know what I think of your skill set as a photographer.
Yeah,
I told you this before when we got here, but you might be better at shooting baseball than you are anything else, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had never been to PNC Park on the media side, so nice press box. They charge for food though. They charge the media for food. I don't know, that's an MLB thing. It's not a Pirates thing, so I can't even make a nutting joke. But anyways,
you poor thing.
Yeah. So it's been a little bit of a break. I like where things have been going. I thought we had a really good conversation the last few times. One of the things that you have mentioned in, I think, all 3 episodes in passing has been Evgeni Malkin. And you seem to believe that the knocks on his defensive game or his overall game are a little overblown. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's basically the gist of what I've gotten from you. And I wanted to kind of take that a step further today, at least. And I think what we'll do, because I don't know that this conversation will be an entire episode's worth of content. So we'll do some rapid fire. I've got some other questions for you to go along with this. But I want to start off with Evgeni Malkin. Why do you think that his game is maybe more complete than the average hockey fan would give him credit for?
So going into this isn't necessarily, or I guess what I'm about to say here isn't necessarily an encapsulation of the player he is right this second and maybe what we can expect looking forward into next season. But in a general sense, throughout his career, Evgeni Malkin has never, ever been considered really by anyone in the hockey world, whether it's Penguins fans or, other markets. Nobody has ever considered him as a great defensive player. Now, there's quite a bit of merit to that. If you can go back very early into his career and you can see moments where, it looked pretty bad, like he blew his assignment or wasn't in the right spot. And that's held true throughout his career. There were moments like that last season. We see that all the time with Malkin. But my thing with it is, and again, this isn't to put him on some pedestal that, actually Malkin should be receiving Selke votes every year. But I think what is lost on a lot of people is why Malkin ends up blowing his assignment in the first place. And a lot of the time it's chalked up to, he's lazy, he doesn't care, he's disengaged. Sure, there have been moments where he's been disengaged in the defensive zone and blew his assignment.
And he's one of those guys, not to cut you off, but he's a very emotional hockey player. So when, the angry Russian bear, everyone's like, he is the best version of himself. But then there's other times where things happen and you can see he really does emotionally check out a little bit. And I think that's the positive and the negative of a player like him that just wears his emotions on his sleeves like that.
Yeah, and I don't want to ignore that or pretend that that's not a thing within that conversation. However, I think for the most part, a lot of the time when we see Malkin end up on the complete wrong side of the ice or when he's missing his guy and all of a sudden, there's nobody in the middle of the slot or anything and the other team's able to rip one by Shirey for an easy goal. And it's like, Malkin was down in the corner. He was streaking out into the neutral zone. Why wasn't he there? I think, again, I've been trying a lot harder not to deal in absolutes here, but I wrote earlier this week that, dealing in absolutes gets you in trouble a lot, especially when
only Siths deal in absolutes.
So,
I just lost a lot of credibility with a lot of people.
me as well. But a lot of what I see with Malkin's defensive issues are because he's trying to push the pace up ice. He's trying to get the puck back as quick as possible. It's not that he's not trying to play defense. I'd actually reckon to say he plays pretty hard defensively, but it's more so that he's picking his spots. And what I mean by that is, you know how Sidney Crosby, especially when he was a youngster, it was very common for people to be like, he always seems to be in the right spot at the right time, and there'd be instances where he'd take a certain route. You'd be like, no, why are you going that way? Or like, what are you doing there? And all of a sudden he looks like a genius because the puck ends up on his stick.
Right.
We see that sometimes with Malkin in the defensive zone as well. It's easy to forget that dude is one of the best players of all time.
Yeah.
Mr. 101. But he is legitimately one of the best players in NHL history. There's an argument to be made that he's a more skilled hockey player than Sidney Crosby is.
I've always thought that Sid is the more consistent. He's got the higher ceiling.
Yeah.
I think that when we've seen Evgeni Malkin take over games, he takes them over at a level that not very many humans can do, where Sid is just kind of that even, like his consistency level is so high that's what makes him an all-time great.
Right. And so as far as Malkin, it's easy to forget that he's thinking the game at a higher level than basically just about everyone else out there. Now he's in his late 30s now. That processing power might not be as high, and obviously his physical tools aren't what they were when he was 25. So that's all going to have an effect on his overall performance, especially in the defensive zone. But what I see often, whether it's good or bad, I'm jumping ahead here. Malkin's defensive impact, we've talked a lot about like these isolated impact models that are basically looking to assign a value to the impact of an individual player, whether it's their team's ability to create quality offense or limit quality chances against. Malkin typically is graded out around replacement level, which is about the 25th percentile of NHL forwards. So again, that metric is true. We have that data, but the reason that happens a lot of the time is because, as I said a couple of minutes ago, he's looking to push the pace up ice and get the puck back as quick as possible. So he's always popping in and out of passing lanes. And a lot of the time, if you could make a read that you're 100% sure that cross ice pass is coming and you have to dash through the middle of the ice to get in that lane. But hockey is a game of so many little micro reads that something could change in a literal instant. And if that pass doesn't come through, all of a sudden they could work it right to the ice that Malkin had just vacated in the middle of the slot as he's working his way up ice. And then all of a sudden he looks like an idiot. But on the other hand, if that pass had gone through and he intercepted it, as we've seen so many times throughout his career, even last season, the 22 postseason when they played the Rangers, he scored a huge goal at PPG Paints Arena, exactly like that, where he stole a cross ice pass, raced down the ice, and scored off the rush.
Yep.
So that's what he's trying to do, if nothing else. But it looks really, really bad when it doesn't work.
Can there be an argument made? And I think that this could go for a lot of athletes just in general. You see the great ones kind of adapt, but you talked about the level in which he thinks the game. Do you think that there could be something, and I think maybe we saw it a little bit last year with him at times, where he's thinking and processing the game at such a high level, and he's so used to his body being able to say, yeah, I could do that, and then go do it. And now that he's in his mid to late 30s, his body, he's still thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And his body's like, no, you're not. And so do you think that there's maybe a little bit of a transition there for him to say, okay, I still have to think the game at a high level, but now I have to figure out a new way to do what I'm thinking about. And you see that, like, there will be veteran players in every sport that you'll see towards the end of their career, they'll kind of dip for a year, and then they come back for a year or two before they retire. And, you know, the great ones seem to do that a lot, where they have that second or third wind because they're learning how to adapt their new skill set to the way they think.
Yeah, I would say probably, there's so many different cycles and stages of an athlete's career, right?
Right.
Like you get drafted. It's different across the different sports, but hockey specifically, you're a top 5, top 10 pick. You're coming in with a lot of pedigree. You're one of the best of that draft class, but all of a sudden you've got another 2, 3, 4 years till you're even sniffing the NHL. And then once you get there, that's another 1 to 2 to 3 year process of learning how to become an NHLer, the kind of habits you need, and then learning the on ice portion of that at that point. So you're already looking at 5 to 7 years there as a bit of a getting up to speed point. And then once you're up to speed, I guess that's what we would consider a player's prime. Mm-hmm. And that could last anywhere from 2 to 3, 4, 5, 6 years. But then, like you said, all of a sudden their body's not reacting and doing the same things that it was when they were younger. And then they have to start to make those changes. So I think the point or the question you asked kind of leads into maybe a bigger discussion that maybe not that we're going to flesh out here that would be for us to do, but I think it would be interesting to see the different kind of the cycles that athletes and hockey players specifically, like the franchise legends and the hockey legends that are playing into their late 30s, because a lot of guys, they're out of the league by the time they're 33, 34 years old.
Yeah, and I think, not to make this a broader NHL conversation, but this is why I have really tried hard to not hate on guys like Connor McDavid, because now that he's in his late 20s, we are watching prime Connor McDavid, because it's the physical ability and the mental, the way that he thinks are finally in perfect alignment. And like you said, that's a 2 or 3 year window for most people. Now, we don't know how long it'll be for a guy like him, but we saw that when we were robbed of that with Sid, with the concussion and the neck injury and everything. And so what I would say as a hockey fan, just as an aside, when you have a guy like Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon or Sidney Crosby or these all-world skill players, enjoy them. Don't hate on them. Enjoy what we get to watch. As a fan, it's fun to rip people, but I'm so excited to see guys like that go to that next level. And we saw that with Gino. We saw him as an MVP. We saw him as an Art Ross trophy winner. And I still think that peak and prime Gino is we were lucky to get to see it in Pittsburgh. And I think that this whole conversation about his defense is a perfect example of quit hating. Just enjoy it. There's flaws in his game, but the man is not the 101st best hockey player of all time. He is in my opinion, easily a top 40 player of all time. When you really look at his body of work and the skill set that he brought to the game. And I think it's a shame that we even have to have this conversation, because there's so much more we can enjoy about Evgeni Malkin, and, even Sidney Crosby, and Chris Letang's another one who gets this treatment, that, turnovers and all the other things about he is one of the best defensive players of his generation. Just enjoy it. I don't understand why people just can't enjoy things.
Yeah, this topic wasn't, the point of it wasn't to be like, well, actually Malkin's really good at defense, but
we know that's not his strong suit.
Yeah, it was more so reframing it as he sucks and is lazy and can't play defense, and more so going to explain, well, yeah, he does have rather poor defensive impacts, and the way he's playing out there is I hesitate to use the term hurting, because like I said, the way he's playing in the defensive zone is to try and get the puck back, and a lot of what he does in the defensive zone is what helps drive his production, and what helps drive his still very elite ability to push offensive chances. So it wasn't about being like, watch Malkin, you'll really see that he should be in the Selke conversation, but it's more so just explaining that he's not being lazy. Again, there are moments where that happens, but it's reframing the conversation as to why that is, on I guess more just being more realistic about it, rather than just the easy narrative.
I had the same conversation with Alex Stumpf, DK Pittsburgh Sports, about Key Brian Hayes. What does Key Brian Hayes need to do offensively to be, a top 1, 2, or 3 third baseman in the majors, because of how good his defense is? I think it's the opposite question with Evgeni Malkin. What does he have to do defensively to basically just keep it worth, him being an all-world offensive player? You're not looking at Evgeni Malkin for his defense. Like you said, he's not a Selke candidate. He's never going to be a Selke candidate, and that's okay because that's not the game he plays. And I think that, like you said, calling him lazy, saying that he doesn't care, I think that that's stupid. It's looking at the game a different way and understanding why he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah, and the other thing in hockey as well, high-end offensive value or the ability to impact the offensive portion of the game at a high level like Malkin does, that kind of ability has infinitely more value than the negative value on the defensive side. But if you look at like the distribution of impact that you can make on both sides of the ice, well, you look at a guy like McDavid, he's so far ahead of the pack offensively that he's not, but he could be the absolute worst defensive player ever,
right.
and it still wouldn't matter.
He's still a great player. Yeah.
Right. So, and especially in the NHL where you have so many of these guys that have basically just turned themselves into checkers and grinders, for lack of better terms, just so that they could have NHL careers, you can find these guys with decent defensive impacts for cheap. So if a lot of the time, how many times have I said a lot of the time today? Didn't I say last week that I needed to stop saying a lot of the time? We're still working on our little catchphrases.
I'm still working on mine too. It's a process.
Anyway, I don't even know where I was going with that. That's probably a good time to transition here.
Yeah, I think we can, we all know what Malkin is. I just think it's good, and this is why we have this show, is to try to reframe conversations, take a different approach, look at a different angle of the game, and go from there.
I remember what I was about to say right there.
Okay.
You can find good, cheap, positively impactful defensive players anywhere. It's a lot harder to find guys that are going to bring it at an elite level offensively year in and year out. And that's what Malkin has done throughout his entire career. It's not even like, oh yeah, he's good offensively some years and like elite offensive production and impacts every single year of his career. And again, even considering everything I've said about his defensive impact, he could be the worst defensive player in the NHL, and he would still have immense value because of the things he can do offensively that so many other people can't.
But Denny, I'm glad you brought up defense versus offense, because there is a player on this Penguins roster right now on the blue line that I really do believe this conversation fits. P.O. Joseph, we're not even 100% certain that he's going to make the lineup because of Ty Smith and, the depth that the Penguins do have in their bottom half of their blue line. But I do believe that POJ brings something to the table that the Penguins need. I think that he can be a producer for them. But how does he fit? How does his impact fit right now? And can he even get past Ty Smith right now?
I would put him ahead of Ty Smith right now, if for no other reason than the fact that he was last season and held down the Penguins' sixth defense spot while Ty Smith spent all of, he played 9 NHL games last year. Yeah. So Smith was down in the minors the whole year, and then toward the end of the season, he took a shot off his cheekbone or something and missed a bit of time and was injured. So I would say that Joseph probably has the inside track on Smith right now. But Smith also has a much higher pedigree than Joseph does. And I know that there's a lot of intrigue around what he can bring offensively. At the end of the day here, and we can get into Joseph specifically here in a second, but I think at the end of the day, Joseph and Smith are such similar players in the way that they're impacting the game, but they go about it a lot differently.
Okay.
Right. So like Ty Smith, he's not playing with a ton of pace. He's a little bit of a smaller guy. He's trying to make crafty passes, but he's not necessarily someone that, I would consider that is driving play a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And, there are some offensive numbers that suggest he was doing that a little bit earlier in his career when he was still with the Devils. But as far as his skill set is concerned, I'm not 100% sure that how do I want to say this? I'm just not 100% sure that at the end of the day, let me back up again here. The Penguins are going to have Chris Letang and Erik Karlsson on their top two pairings.
Absolutely.
Those are the two
yes,
offensive workhorses on those two pairings, and those guys are going to be on, assuming here, one guy's going to be on the top power play unit with everybody healthy, and then one of the other guys is going to be on the second power play unit. So that's probably not even leaving any room there for a Joseph or Smith unless they want to roll 2D on that second unit, which is, I guess, is a possibility considering some of the forward options they have for that second unit.
We're not going to get into the Jeff Carter conversation.
Yeah, we're not doing that today here. But you can already see that there's going to be a very limited opportunity here, whether it is Joseph or Smith on the left side of that third pairing here, to really produce a whole lot. They can still have positive offensive impacts, but the production opportunity is just not going to be there a whole lot. They're going to be getting somewhere, I would reckon, 11 to 13 minutes a game, maybe. So that's already, a very low threshold there to be able to put points on the board as a defenseman, which is pretty,
difficult to begin with.
It's difficult because you're very dependent on the finishing of your forwards. Mm-hmm. So, and especially if you're playing only 10, 13 minutes a game.
With the bottom six forwards.
Correct.
It's makes it even more difficult.
Correct. And then you look at that they're probably not going to have much power play time at all. Well, then you're looking, okay, maybe 20-ish points would be a bullish outlook for a Joseph or Smith next season.
So would you, in that case then, would you rather go with the more defensively responsible of the two and just say, hey, maybe not be a shutdown guy, but just don't screw, like what we were talking about Ruedel the first episode, just don't screw it up. Is kind of, I think the approach I would take with that third pair then. I don't necessarily want somebody that's going to try to drive a lot of play and make, I don't want to say high danger things happen, but push the issue like what we were talking about with Malkin earlier, like taking those chances, those calculated chances to try to make offense happen. I would rather in that case, if they're only playing 10, 13 minutes a game, I'd rather just say, look, stay home, be smart, don't do anything stupid, don't screw the game up.
I guess the question then becomes of Joseph and Smith, which one of them do you believe is better defensively?
I lean towards PO, but just because I think he's built more for it, but I haven't seen enough of Ty Smith to really say, yeah, he's not as good or he's better. So I would lean towards PO, but I couldn't give you a definite answer. And I guess that's what we're going to find out during training camp and preseason.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my next point, is that Ty Smith is now at the point where he should be maybe not the Penguins specifically, but just in a general sense, Ty Smith's at the point where the league should know what kind of player he is and how he's going to impact the game. Well, the Penguins don't. I'm not confident in really asserting, going back to dealing in absolutes here, I'm not confident in asserting much of anything about Ty Smith's game at this stage because I genuinely don't know. I've got opinions and thoughts about what I've seen previously, but there's, how much of his development are we considering into that equation? How much of spending last year in the minors after he started out 2 seasons in the NHL, right? How much is that impacting him? And we haven't seen him a whole lot with the Penguins at the NHL level to be making these sweeping statements on his long-term outlook. I don't know that Smith or Joseph has a leg up defensively on one or the other. What I will say is that I think Joseph might be, I think you said it, he's a little more suited
he's
to play a
kind
better,
of built a little better for a defensive game.
Yeah, I mean, he's still a
his
relatively...
his skill set seems to lend itself to be able to be more of a defensive guy, I think.
Yeah, and... it was interesting at the maybe 2-month mark of last season when the Penguins' blue line was not looking all that great, and it was basically the Marcus Pettersson show, and everyone else was kind of throwing up all over themselves. That said, Joseph at the time had been playing rather well on the third pairing, and within that, I thought that his transition defense had taken some serious strides from where he was at the previous couple of seasons. There were points in time where he was swallowing up opposing rushes and like flipping the script right away, and the Penguins are back up ice in no time. Mm-hmm. I don't know that he's the kind of guy that's going to be swallowing up the McDavids of the world and being able to go up against top competition. I'm not expecting that at all. This is purely based on playing on the third pairing, getting bottom six matchups for the most part. I do think that while he's never going to be, I would probably be surprised if he even ended up having a season with like average defensive impacts. However, I do think that he has the smarts to do it, and he does, like a lot of the third pairing defensemen in the NHL, they play a very modern brand of hockey.
Yeah.
Because they don't necessarily have the Erik Karlsson tools to make these ridiculous passes or push the play up ice. So we see a lot of these like modern tactics with these guys that, you know, the Chad Ruhwedels and the Mark Friedmans of the world, these guys that most of the league has never even heard of or the casual fan's not familiar with. They're not really doing anything sexy out there, but then all of a sudden you go and look and like they've got an XG percentage of like 60%, right? Mm-hmm. So I think Joseph has the ability to do those things. I just don't know that he's ever going to be. I don't know that he's ever going to become more than a third pairing guy. And I know that
the Penguins need him to be.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like if Joseph does exactly what he does last year, he'll be fine on that third pairing.
Let's throw a hypothetical out there. Say he has a 5-year, 6-year career with the Penguins, okay? And he doesn't get past the third pairing other than, you know, occasionally spot filling for injuries and stuff like that on the second pair. The Penguins are committed to Graves long-term. They're committed to, even though he's older, they're committed to Letang and Karlsson. You know, how Dubas decides to move those contracts later on, you know, 3-4 years down the line is, you know, completely up in the air. And then they seem to be pretty committed to Pettersson as well, as I think they should be. I think he is their best defensive defenseman right now.
I don't think there's any question.
Yeah. So my question is, if that's your top four, do you need POJ to do anything more than what you just laid out? If you're the Penguins, all you really need from him is just to be solid. Just don't, you know, you don't need him to be elite defensively. You don't need him to be elite offensively. You just need him to be smart, which he has, and you just need him to play a very solid hockey game in his own zone. And I'm cool with that. I'm completely okay with that. That complements the rest of what this roster has.
Right. They don't need a lot more from him. Honestly, if Joseph is able to clean up some of the oh crap moments that he had last year, like completely fine. And like we were talking about a little bit ago, that might just go into the development cycle of a player. I mean, I know he'd been with the Penguins previously over the past couple seasons, but you know, again, there's still a learning curve there to becoming an everyday NHL player, which is something he didn't do until last season. So looking forward, if the Penguins basically get the same exact performance out of him, but he's able to cut those oh crap moments in half, then I think that would be great for them. I'm
going to compare this to something, and you will probably throw me off of this show as your host when I'm done with this, because I'm going to bring up a very lightning rod of a name. But when the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup, who did they have on their bottom pairing?
Are we comparing the Avalanche of, what is that, 2 seasons ago now to the current form of the Pittsburgh Penguins?
Kind of, sort of.
And why is that, Eddie?
Okay. Jack Johnson was on that roster and won a Stanley Cup with the Avalanche.
He was.
Okay. That roster was so good. They didn't need Jack Johnson to be anything other than just a dude that could fill minutes and not screw anything up.
Oh, wait. What about that last part? I would just leave that as a guy that could go out there for a handful of minutes.
My point is, we all agree that POJ is a better hockey player than Jack Johnson.
No question.
Okay. The Avalanche won a Stanley Cup with Jack Johnson. I think with the Penguins not being as good of a roster as that Avalanche roster was, as it's currently constructed, I believe that somebody like POJ is perfectly fine, more than okay, in this current situation that the Penguins are in, because they don't need him to do a lot. There is no need for POJ to take over a game, and there never will be. If there is a need for that, the Penguins are in a lot more trouble than we're hoping.
And truthfully, it might be a slight exaggeration, but last season there were points in time where they were kind of relying on him a little bit more.
My point in bringing up the Avalanche and Jack Johnson is it's possible to have just a guy, just a dude on the roster and go far. And I think this fan base is so spoiled when it comes to hockey talent. I mean, just in the last 25 years, look at the hockey players that have come through Pittsburgh. Not even like long-term guys. Look at guys that came in on the at the trade deadline, guys that were here for a year or two. We are so spoiled as a city when it comes to elite hockey talent that I think sometimes we forget you just need a guy. You need a Mark Eaton. You need a POJ. You need, a Mark Friedman. You need, I won't go as far as to say you need a Jack Johnson, but but you can service a guy like that and just get through a half a season or, 70 games or whatever it is if they just don't screw things up. And I think that is the type of player the Penguins want POJ to be right now. And I think that's the type of player that he can be in the 2023-2024 season for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that most cup winners, maybe even every cup winner, has maybe not non-contributors, but guys who are not very good. Like Avalanche won a cup with Jack Johnson. The Capitals won a cup in 2018 with Brooks Orpik on their blue line, and he was terrible at that point. The Penguins won a cup in 2017 with Ron Hainsey playing on the top pairing with Brian Dumoulin. Yeah. Okay, so
but he actually kind of played good for a stretch of time.
Yeah,
that's what's wild.
Yeah, that yes. I will. Like once a week or every other week. I don't know why. Probably just because I'm a hockey sicko weirdo nerd. But once a week or every other week, I just have like daydreams of Hainsey. Who was it? James Neal and somebody else in the 2017 Cup final. He made that awesome dish, causing two Predators to run into each other. And he just flies up the ice, and next thing you know,
channels his inner Bobby Orr.
Channeling his inner Bobby Orr and scoring a goal.
Side Ron Hainsey, if you are a puck doku player, Ron Hainsey is a great back pocket guy to have. I mean, Winnipeg, Pittsburgh, Carolina, Toronto, and I'm missing probably 4 teams. I mean, I think he's played for 8 or 9 teams in his career.
Did you say Atlanta?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
So So if you're a puck doku player, Ron Hainsey, back pocket, just throwing it out there.
I love it. I've been getting a little bored with puck doku. I gotta.
Yeah, me too. I struggled with it the last couple of days. I don't know if my brain's just been fried.
So when it first came out, maybe the first month and a half, like first thing I did when I woke up, I'm going to the bathroom doing my business, and I'm sitting there filling out my puck doku board, and it was serious business for me.
What a mental description.
I probably could have left that part out.
Probably.
Anyway.
Probably.
All right, let me restart. Every day when I would wake up and roll out of bed, I would go straight to puck doku to fill out my board. With, I don't know, over the last 3-4 weeks now, like I rarely even think about it. And unless I see people tweeting their boards and it's like, oh, it's Pens Day or whatever, I'll be like, oh, if it's Penguins Day, I'll go over there and do something.
Penguins Day is like a free, like for most of us, it's like a free 3 spaces. I mean,
well, so what I've been trying to do, and I know we're just completely rambling
off the rails now.
Well, that's fine. Like I want to be able to do this on the show. That's why you and I are involved and nobody else. So if you guys aren't liking us talk about puck doku, we'll see you next week. Anyway, especially when it's a Penguins board, I'm going for the rarity. Like every board that pops up, I could most days get like an 8 out of 9 or 9 out of 9.
Yeah.
Like not trying to brag about that. It's just, I don't really care about
Mr. Hockey guy.
Yeah. Big hockey guy over here, if you couldn't tell. I'm just going for the low rarity score though. I get no satisfaction out of being like, oh yeah, I know Ilya Kovalchuk played for the Canadians and
for what,
Capitals,
10
like
games or something.
I just whatever. So I'm going for those low rarity scores, and on Penguins days, it's absolutely amazing. The one they had the other day was a teammate of Mark Recchi's that played for the Penguins. The first one, and I don't know why, that popped into my head was not Sidney Crosby or anybody else. It was Konstantin Koltsov.
The original 71.
The original 71. He popped into my head, and I'd be like, he's probably going to be a decent answer, but like, you know.
When I was in college, I would hang out at my cousin's house. Her and her husband, was her boyfriend at the time, their house was the party house. And her husband, Jim, is a huge hockey guy too. Like he played goalie in high school. I think he played a little bit in college before he blew his knee out. But Jim and I would sit there around the same age, and we would drink on their porch on Thursday nights and just go through a case or two of beer. And the game we would play literally all night. We would do this, which is great when you're drunk because you don't remember it the next time you'd play the game. So you could just start from scratch and act like it never happened. Is who can name the most obscure former Pittsburgh Penguins?
Ooh.
So it would just be like, Konstantin Koltsov, Joseph Melikar. And then you just keep going back and forth until we either passed out or someone got us on something else. And then next Thursday, we would just do it all over again. And then we'd just do that like all throughout the summer.
It just dawned on me, and I promise we're going to wrap up here shortly. But it just dawned on me that some people might not know what Puck Doku is. We just randomly went into it. Puck Doku is a play on Sudoku.
Yes.
It's a 3x3 board. On the top of the board, you might have like a Penguins logo, a Blue Jackets logo, and a Dallas Stars logo. And then down the left side of the board, you could have 3 other teams or like a random stat category. And you basically just have to go through box by box and find, okay, who's a player who played for the Blue Jackets and the Avalanche. And then you'd have to put somebody into that box. And
I was pretty proud of my goalies for yesterday. It was the 90, at least a 900 save percentage. And on the teams were the Blue Jackets, the Carolina Hurricane, and I'm drawing a blank on the third.
I don't know. I didn't do yesterday's board. I'm curious to see who you said for the Blue Jackets, though.
Ron Tugnut.
Good answer.
Yeah, Ron
Very good
Tugnut.
answer.
And then for the Carolina Hurricanes, I put Alex Nedeljkovic.
Okay.
So it was 2% for Ron Tugnut, 2% for Alex Nedeljkovic. So I'd love to see bringing this all back to Penguins hockey.
Yeah, let's wrap up with some Nedeljkovic.
I would love to see him go back to his form in Carolina, because you remember what happened with him, right? Like he was out of his mind in Carolina. 900 again, over 900 save percentage. Kind of took over in Carolina for a period of time during that season, and then they just decided, we're not gonna do anything with him. And then he goes to Detroit
and sucks.
And absolutely, just lost it. I don't know what. Now, is that playing with Detroit? Is that not having anybody, literally anyone other than Dylan Larkin in front of him? I don't know. But I think that there is space there for him to be a very, very serviceable backup goalie for the Penguins if we can get Carolina Nedeljkovic.
Well, yeah, if they get Carolina Nedeljkovic, they're going to have a guy that is going to be able to fill in when Tristan Jarry inevitably lands on the shelf at some point with an injury. That being said, I am not convinced by any means that the performance of Nedeljkovic going into the season, and this is assuming that he gets the backup spot, because I don't think it's going to be Magnus Hellberg. I would be genuinely shocked if Nedeljkovic's performance in 2023, 2024 is anything close to what the Penguins have got out of Casey DeSmith as their backup.
Really? You know what? Let's pin it right there.
Next week?
Goalie talk next week.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. For those of you watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, share it, do all that stuff for us. Make sure you're subscribed to Danny's Substack, Breakdowns and Breakaways. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast. If you could do us a favor, leave a review, write a little comment in there about what.
Yeah, we love hearing from you guys. Like, we see the numbers of who's watching and who's viewing and the downloads and everything. But tell us what you think. Like, we're doing this for us, but we're doing this for you guys. And also,
too. Like, we still have a couple weeks, probably about a month, until we really start digging into some serious hockey talk on the regular season. So over these next few weeks, I keep mentioning this, but if you have something that you want us to talk about, drop it in the comments section, either on the Substack or the YouTube. I think you can even do it on Spotify. I'm not sure if you can do individual comments on Apple, but you can do that on Spotify.
You guys know how to get in touch with us.
Yeah, shoot us a message on Twitter or something, or leave a comment. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about. Because honestly, some of the stuff, like the Riley Smith episode, was something from a commenter, and that I think was one of our. This is only the 4th episode.
It was great. It had to have been one of.
It was a top 5 episode, man. It was absolutely a top 5 episode. So, that's all I've got house cleaning wise, housekeeping wise. On that note, we will see you all next week for the Breakdowns and Breakaways podcast. That's Danny Shirey. I'm Eddie Provident.